This video will give you every single brawler's weakness. A while back I made a video on brawler values, and unless Supercell thinks of something completely revolutionary, any brawler they add to the game will have one or more of those values. So by explaining the weakness of each value, we're actually explaining the weakness of all the brawlers that have that value, even brawlers that haven't come out yet. Is your mind blown right now? I sure hope so. Ambush value. Ambush value brawlers rely on close range attacks and tend to enjoy bush camping and middle trophy games. Because they're the most effective at point blank range and tend to hang out in bushes, they are weak to any brawler that outranges them, which include every brawler in the sharpshooter class plus a few others. They are also weak to the exposure value, which can ruin their ambush potential, and tend to have high health, making them weak to shift damage brawlers. Control. Control brawlers are best suited for maps where defending an area is necessary, like goal and area oriented game modes. However, they tend to have low health and are easy to take out in a close range situation. Throwers can handle control value brawlers really well. They can also be repelled by other control brawlers like one Ems pushing back another Ems, and disruption is another viable strategy against control brawlers. Fallback. Fallback value brawlers are one of the hardest to deal with since the value itself has no direct counter. It can be countered though. One is through disruption, for example using friend zone on an incoming buzz or stunning an Edgar that just landed. The other viable counter is, much like control, another fallback brawler, someone that can match the mobility of their opponent. Support value. Support brawlers are also difficult to deal with, but often support brawlers tend to have low health and can be dealt with by fallback brawlers or assassins. For example, have a Primo attack the enemy Poco or Mortis take out the enemy Jean. Another effective tactic is to harass support brawlers constantly and break their focus from helping teammates to defending themselves. Distance value. Distance value brawlers often have the longest ranges in game. They can be taken out in two ways. One is with another distance brawler, for example a duel between two Pipers, or you can get close to them using either some sort of sneak attack or with a fallback brawler. Shift damage value. Shift damage brawlers often have low health but an ever-changing damage output, which is why approaching them should be done very carefully. One thing both distance and shift damage brawlers tend to be weak to is disruption. Because they depend on attacking from a distance, disruption is often a good way to distract them long enough to take them out. Another thing both of these values tend to struggle against is the control value. Distance and shift damage brawlers often need to get into a good position to snipe enemies, and because of this, using a control brawler to force them out of it is another effective tactic. Area value. Area value brawlers are, a majority of the time, throwers. The area value can't be directly countered, but its effect can be reduced. Area value brawlers work really well if enemies are clustered together, so distancing yourself from teammates is an effective tactic. Much like control brawlers, a lot of area brawlers tend to struggle with enemies sneaking up on them. Area brawlers need to be constantly attacking as many lanes as possible, so by sneaking up on them, you're diverting them from their main focus. Survival value. The only real way to counter survival brawlers is with one of your own. Two very strong survival brawlers are Poco and Pam, just to give you an idea of what you're dealing with. One viable tactic is to keep survival brawlers' health constantly dwindling, either by poisoning them or constantly damaging them. They also tend to be weak to shift damage brawlers. Exposure value. The exposure value has no counter but rather limitations. That could be a gadget limitation or a range limitation. Whatever the case, exposure brawlers cannot expose all enemies at all times. For example, Gale has to decide a specific direction to use his super, or Colt who can't take out every wall at once, or Tara who can only use her gadget 3 times. A good method you can use is disruption. If you manage to disrupt an enemy that's about to expose you, then you or a teammate can quickly finish them off, reducing enemy numbers in the process. Contiguous value. HRF brawlers fire multiple consecutive shots. Since HRF bullets travel in a straight line, the shooter can't adjust their aim in the middle of one clip of ammo, so the trick is to change direction when you see the first bullets coming. Pierce and splash damage brawlers are easy to handle. If you avoid lining up or huddling together, you can minimize the damage done. Bounce damage brawlers rely on choke points and tight corners, and an easy way to counter them is with throwers. Because they need their shots to hit at least one enemy before passing to the next, or bounce at just the right angle to hit their target, having a thrower quickly take them out from behind a wall is always a good strategy. Disruption value. Disruption is one of the most powerful tactics you can use in Brawl Stars. The value's only weakness is that it only affects a very small part of the map, be it Primo's landing, Daryl's roll, or Dynamite's stun. The easiest thing to do is to avoid disruptive attacks when you sense one coming. Expect disruptive attacks to come in offensive or defensive gameplay and not in passive gameplay. Did you know that there are 2 types of brawler builds? That's coming up next. Subscribe so you don't miss out.